everyone. Welcome to Boca's Briefcase, and thank you to the Boca Raton Tribune for giving us this platform to bring you amazing speakers in our community and the news that's going on. I'm so excited. In 2 weeks, for those of us that used to go to the theater, for example, Florida Performing Center, Broward Performing Center of the Arts in Kravis, we had Les Mis not so long ago, and Joshua Davis, who played Inspector, the inspector from the play, is going to be here and hopefully will sing for us. So I'm very excited. We're going to have some Broadway guests here. But that leads us to today. So in the meantime, we have amazing guests to talk about what's going on with families. So we have a lot of couples that have been stuck living together, families that have been stuck living together, like my parents, for example, who've been together forever, and they're happy to remain together, but they welcome some healthy tips, just having to be in the same household. But unfortunately, we also have couples that, because of COVID, it's brought out maybe they're not meant to be together. So we have two great guests, Julia Gaita, Esquire, our attorney here today. She's a family attorney. She earned her BA from Boston and her JD from Northeastern. She is just our expert in family law, from everything from adoptions all the way to prenups through divorce, and even can discuss issues on separation. So she's going to be our expert here today. And we're very excited to also welcome Alexia McLeod. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. She's the owner and founder of the Therapeutic Center for Hope. She covers, again, the gamut, just like Juliana, from relationships, marriages, adoption, and even helps people dealing with trauma. So she's got some great tips for us today for both couples that want to stay together and maybe couples that maybe it's time they need space or separation. So I'm really looking forward to our conversation, and let's begin. So I know a lot of people have been very excited for today's topic. So let's start with you, Alexia. Maybe we can start with some positive advice on what have you been hearing on your end from clients just dealing with COVID, just your regular Joe family.
Oh my goodness. Well, COVID has brought about so much for so many people. First, I have to really just say thank you for having me because I'm so excited to be here. But COVID has brought about a lot of different stresses that many people may or may not have been facing in the past before, but now amazingly have come to light. So I'm happy to help to walk them through it. So whether or not it's been someone that has been going through the process of this amazing dating, or in their marriage and kind of everybody's busy, or they're in the process of a divorce, it brings about different emotions for us because now, because of the pandemic, people are starting to feel senses of loneliness that may or may not have been there before. They're starting to recognize certain things within their mate that they may not have seen before. And now there's very little escape because we're all locked in.
Well, how can people, either who are living with partners or living with children, how can they maintain these relationships during COVID? What would be your advice on that?
My total advice would be to, recognize the positive. A lot of times, because especially when we have kids and they're home and there's a lot of role changes, a role reversal. Maybe one person is staying home with their child most of the time. The other person may be out to work and now the sole breadwinner. We have to, instead of looking at those large moments of just expectation and pleasure, is really appreciate the small moments. One of my big pieces of advice to my clientele or to the people that I speak to is to just really take time, be able to verbalize, spend the time verbalizing what is going right instead of focusing on what is going wrong.
I like that. I like that positive discussion. And I was speaking with you, Juliana, because you deal with divorce almost daily, but you had a positive approach to it as well. And we were discussing how you were helping clients see it as a next chapter. Can you talk about your positivity with that?
Yeah, so we, at our firm, we tend to see divorce as, we're not naive enough to think that the divorce process is necessarily going to be a fun, exciting process. But within the divorce process, you are making plans for your future and what you want your future to look like. And so that can be kind of looking towards the future can be a hopeful process. So it's kind of just a little bit of a perspective shift that we kind of instill into our clients and talk about, whereas I think typically and culturally, divorce is kind of seen as, you know, something that is a terrible thing that is happening. But if you define a successful marriage only by the length of the marriage, then yes, you're going to have that, you know, kind of negative outlook on divorce because it's the end of something that was supposed to, you know, last for a long time. But if you kind of change the ideas and the discussions around divorce, where a successful marriage is one that allows you to grow into the person that you are today, then it doesn't have to be this negative ending of something. It really can just be looking and starting a new chapter. And that's kind of how we approach it.
I want to touch on something you said about, you know, waiting for that process to happen. And either of you can answer this. I've spoken to some couples who feel a little stuck because of COVID. They don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, whether it's their decision to try separation or go through divorce. Do you have any advice on people that think this is endless? Maybe I'm going to be stuck in this situation forever. I don't see a positive next step.
Definitely, I would. And I've seen that a lot, even in people that they've been considering or even starting the process of divorce. And now they're afraid because of financial differences against the feeling of depression or loneliness and wanting to have some stability in their lives. This is our new normal. So, you know, I don't think that things are going to change as rapidly as we would like for them to, like today. But what we would like to do is to be able to really look at what is going to be a great thing for us. I love what Juliana said is, you know, we can really take the D of divorce doesn't mean like damned forever. What it means is that if you do choose to go through that process, you need to go through the same mental processes of really evaluating and strategizing. Is this going to be the best thing for me in the long run? Is this, you know, let me take the steps and see what is going to be best so that I'm not having regret for myself,
right,
in the end.
And Juliana, if people aren't quite ready to take steps towards divorce, what are some other options that maybe a couple can consider now instead of divorce?
Well, absolutely. I mean, a lot of times right now, what we're seeing is people, even if they're ready to take the steps towards divorce, they don't necessarily want to actually get divorced for health insurance purposes or whatever, you know, numerous reasons. So there are kind of ways around that. I mean, we can enter into a legal separation agreement, a postnuptial agreement. You can seek and petition for alimony without actually having to file for divorce. So what I tell couples is, you know, getting with an attorney, even when you're just thinking about divorce, it's good to come up with a game plan in anything that you're doing, or just to know what your rights are, know what the legal process looks like, and to kind of make a step-by-step plan, so that if you do decide to go through the process, you kind of have an idea of what it's going to look like. So, you know, there are other options other than just filing and going through a divorce. There are other options, and there might be kind of baby steps that you can take to get yourself there mentally, legally, all of the different ways in making a plan.
And I welcome anyone watching too. Obviously, this can't be legal or professional therapy advice because you have to speak with your professional directly. But you're welcome to ask questions here in the chat, and everyone will try to answer as best as possible. And of course, these professionals are here because they want to help the community. So following today's discussion, feel free to reach out to our attorney and to our licensed psychotherapist, because they're here to help. So I'm going to follow up with you, Juliana, on what you were touching about. If you already know in your heart that divorce is the option, you've discussed this or haven't discussed it, but you know this is what you're planning to do, is there benefits to filing sooner rather than later, waiting to the unknown?
Well, yeah, I mean, we do try to tell people it is dependent on everybody's situation, but sometimes the filing date can kind of act as the operative date of when you're cutting off, you know, different assets and liabilities. So if you have a spouse who maybe is dissipating marital assets with some, you know, for instance, like a gambling problem, drug abuse, whatever it is, that filing date can become the operative date as to which it'll cut off certain liabilities. So even for some of our clients who are maybe not ready to take that final step towards divorce, you can still file and not necessarily serve the petition on your spouse. You have time, you have 180 days to do that, and it might open up and start some different conversations that weren't previously happening between the couple.
I think that's very important information that you've stated there, and I hope our viewers realize how important that is. That if you know this is the decision you're going to make, that to file now, just so it's on record, that can affect your intention, your decision on finances. This could really protect you in the long run. Let's switch back to Alexia for a moment and talk a little about emotional health. If I'm going to talk about dating in a second. But before we get to dating, let's stick on the divorce topic. What are some tips on emotional health if you're going on a divorce through the pandemic, through COVID? You're going through a divorce. Your life, you're like filing, and you're living in the same household, and you can't go anywhere. Please, we welcome any advice.
Well, you know what? I'm so happy to give advice because I think a lot of people want to know, how do I survive? How do I get through? So a big part of this is just really trying your best to maintain your mental health, practicing self-care, whether it is with exercise, meditation, just giving yourself a timeout and knowing that it is okay to step back and really evaluate. You may be in a situation right now that you would not have chosen. I haven't met a lot of people that when they got married, they chose divorce. However, I'm going to put money on the fact that you chose happiness. So knowing that, as you're stepping through, this is a process. And theoretically, a lot of people don't recognize that once you actually within your heart know that this is not for you and you want to go through the stages of divorce, it really takes up to 2 years for you to emotionally get through. So allow yourself some time, knowing that whatever you're feeling is okay, and surround the right people around you that can give you a good support.
I think I love the positivity and the growth and the inspiring information, both from legal and from the psychotherapist, Alexia, because it's such a different spin than I think in our parents' day, what we were hearing about, just divorce being so ugly, it's going to be negative, it's a secret, it's terrible. And this is just a different view of that. We have a question, and this is a positive, happy question from Carolina. Is there any happy marriage tip on conflict resolution when your space is limited? You're living together, you're newlyweds, but how do you deal with that?
Do you want to go ahead, Juliana?
Well, from a legal standpoint, typically when we have a client come in and they're taking that step or papers have been filed against them, we kind of talk about, well, can you guys coexist under the same roof? Is that healthy for everyone? Is that healthy for the children? What does that look like? If it's not, we will find out, well, what are the arrangements? Can you move out? Do you want to stay in the house? And then we can file a motion for temporary relief, which is, for exclusive use of the marital home.
That's actually another question we just got. That was advice on getting the person who you're divorcing to move out of the house. So we have a question here that says, basically, if you're going through a divorce, but you're living in COVID, is there any advice on getting someone to leave?
Yeah. So,
even not through COVID, anytime.
Yeah. Assume that you've had some of those conversations ahead of time. And if you haven't, we can kind of coach you on how to have that conversation from a legal perspective. But certainly we're able to motion the court and ask for that relief if the other person's refusing. We have sort of overall tips that we, advise our clients when they're going through the process. We've broken it down to a cute little sheet, like 10 tips when you're going through divorce. But one of those tips is really to be reasonable. So, you want someone to be reasonable with you, and you're going to have to offer that. It's a door that swings two ways. So, during COVID, if it's impossible, if everyone's out of work right now and you have to be in the same house, it might be impossible for someone to secure alternate housing. But if someone has a relative they can go live with, and abandoning the home, there's this notion of if you leave the marital home, you're less entitled to it. That's not true. That's not true. So you need to take whatever steps you need to take to get yourself healthy, into safe position. It doesn't matter if you don't have to camp in the home to make that home yours, So,
right.
Yeah.
Thank you. And Alexia, we're going to go back to the happy couple now because we skipped over that. Juliana jumped right into divorce. I saw that. she jumped right. We're going back to the happy couple question. It said, hey, we're happy, but we still need a little advice. We're not used to being together 24 hours a day. How about those people that?
Oh, well, you know what, for everyone, this has been it's a big transition, and being in the house all the time with the same person, even if you're working in separate areas in the house, it's still a lot. So, my suggestion is step outside the box. Now it's time to get really creative with things, to play games as a couple, as well as, with your kids. It's important to still find those times that you can spend together as a couple, if you're in that happy place. And I love what you're saying, Juliana. I've seen so many couples, whether or not they are, divorcing or not, that can still, it's so important that you find a place where you have mental health, you have stability. Divorce brings out the worst in everybody. So maintaining your class and your position so that you can prove yourself to be the great person that you are it's imperative.
Juliana, do you think if someone is going through what they hope is going to be an amicable divorce, does sometimes it assist if they use you as an advocate for communication? Because maybe they feel if they go up to the spouse themselves, maybe it won't come across right or emotions come through. So they say, if you don't mind, it's not to be a fight, but I would like Juliana just to send you what I hope is our next step. And then you can reply to her.
Yeah, I mean, we definitely assist in a lot of that. We kind of market saying, we have some of those harder conversations for you, because, the court system is not designed to punish a spouse or reward, punish the bad spouse or reward the good spouse. You're not going to get the emotional justice that you're seeking from the court system. Okay, so one of our other tips is to kind of like check your emotions at the door, because even though you're going through an emotional process, the legal process is not set up to deal with the emotional aspect of this. So if you are but it is an emotional process. So when you're trying to have some of those conversations with your spouse, I mean, how can you leave the emotion out of something that is so ingrained in your entire life? I mean, I always say there's nothing more important to us than our families, our marriage, our children. I mean, so there's no way to check your emotions at the door, really. So it's kind of a misnomer when we say that, but that's why we're involved, because I'm not emotionally involved in your situation. I've seen every situation. I mean, there's not one person that comes in my office that I haven't heard a very similar story. Everyone thinks that theirs is unique, but I've heard it 100 times over.
And we got another question too.
Yeah.
We have from Jackson. What do you do when there are children involved and one parent wants to send the kids to school and the others want to homeschool? I've heard even colleagues discuss this when they have parents that want to send to two different schools. So now we have homeschool versus not homeschool. That's the new discussion. Any advice for Jackson?
Well, you know what, Jackson, thank you so much for that question. It's huge. What we have to do, co-parenting is going to be a very big function, and the time to start doing that is not at the end of divorce. So once you get your paperwork done, really deciding on how to strategize on how you're still going to parent the children that you made is to be done ahead of time. And really in that, there is the school situation. Now COVID has really brought us to a level or a position that we never thought that we would be in. And we have to be able to, as parents, sit down on the same page and make a smart decision for the health and well-being of our kids.
Do you think it's important that, I've heard this in the past, that the parents try to get on the same page to make a plan together, even if they have to compromise a little bit, but at least there's unity?
There has to be
possible, if possible.
Yeah, it's absolutely possible. And we have to remember that, our conflict is not our children's conflict. So, many times, whether your children are verbalizing it or not, they're acting out because they see the constant conflict that's going on because mommy's not happy or daddy's upset. So they will be like, I call them the silent victims of divorce. We have to be able to put our stuff aside and say, guess what? For the better of our children, we're going to sit down and we're going to make this decision. And I suggest, going to a licensed professional and discussing it with them so that you can come up with something that makes sense.
And obviously, if that doesn't work, then I guess, Juliana, if we have a worst case scenario, it can be something that actually is addressed at a hearing just on school issues. Each parent presents their side. Is that what would occur?
Yeah. The court's always looking at this, and this is what we tell our clients to look at it through the lens of what's best for the child. So what's in the best interest of the child. So if you already are divorced, in your divorce plan, in your parenting plan, there probably is already arrangements for something like that, whose address controls when it comes to where the children go to school. But if you're in the process of divorcing, we would certainly go to a hearing if we had to, but I would recommend going to a family therapist or counselor first on something like that to maybe see if there isn't a resolution. But if there's children involved and you approach the divorce, every aspect of the divorce as to what is in the best interest of the child, I find that people really can eventually come to common ground.
That's awesome. And now we can turn to something a little more fun, I guess, which is dating. Right. So we keep going from dating to divorce. It's just such a yin and yang show. But so, Alexia, you were talking about emotional health earlier when we talked about divorce. What about emotional health during dating? I've spoken to people. Some people feel they're unable to date at all. Some are trying to date. What do you hear? You're out in the world hearing from people, and what's your advice?
Really look at things that were going on even before, because before a lot of people were doing online dating. Now things have to just be a little bit different. We might still be doing online dating because it's a little bit safer, but the meeting times may be different. Again, stepping outside the box, making sure that you feel as though you're being safe no matter what you do. Because during the pandemic and the lack of socialization, it can make us make different decisions or choose differently. Ask your friends advice on different things in the dating process, and make sure that you're meeting good people. Stay social.
Right. Yeah. No, that's good. You're going to start seeing commercials. Get a COVID test first.
It's huge. I kind of laugh at it because I get so many people that contact me for relationships and dating and the difficulties of, and I find that a lot of the issues that are coming up are the issues that came up before. Like, I'm not meeting people, or, I met someone, but I don't know. And we are so lucky. I am the positive one, right? We're lucky in the fact that we have these social venues that you can still stay connected through, whether it be through social media, Facebook, things of that nature, Match or JDate or whatever you use. It's so important to go on, and even if it's not to connect dating wise, but just to make a connection with someone so that you're feeling as though, you can have conversation.
That's interesting. I read an article today about teenagers. There was a survey, and they said teenagers are feeling more lonely now than ever before, which is, that's scary because they don't always share their feelings, with their family. But going back to Samara, she has a follow-up question, I think, for Juliana. This is about moving out, where we're talking about can you get one person to move out if you're going through a divorce now? If she writes, if they feel they can't move out, is it reasonable for them to say, well, you can't date anyone while you're in the house? That's a tough question.
So from a legal perspective, I would say no. You can't stop unless if they're dissipating marital assets. That would be the only thing that we could say, we could ask for an unequal distribution of marital assets because they're dating someone and they're spending that kind of money on that person. But from a legal perspective, no. At that point, I would probably say it's really not healthy for both of you to be in the house. So we might have to ask the court for relief and ask the court to just put one person in possession of the home at that time, and the other person will have to come up with.
And that doesn't necessarily have to be a very combative thing. That's just a hearing to have the judge decide what's the temporary situation going to be.
Yeah, and with temporary relief, the court typically requires that you attend mediation before you actually go to the hearing. So it actually, most of the time, can get kind of decided in a mediation without having to even ask the court. And then once we are in court right now, there's Zoom hearings. So I like the Zoom hearings because I think it takes a little bit of that tension away. There's a little bit of this buffer. You're behind the computer screen and you're not in the same room as your spouse, necessarily. So I think that it takes a little bit of the scariness, so to speak, out of the court hearings for the clients.
And can you have mediation on just one issue? Like, say, I don't want to decide all about the divorce and all the assets. I just want to decide what's going to happen for the next few months, and then we'll deal with that later.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, the court requires a mediation before any temporary relief is given. So in that mediation, if you want to talk about everything, you know, and come up to a global settlement, that would be great. Typically, that's so early on in the process that everybody's not in the mental space to kind of do that. And so you would just discuss the stuff that's in your temporary relief motion. So maybe just exclusive use of the home, maybe, you know, support payments, child support payments during the process, during the divorce proceeding.
Now let's take a different look at that. Alexia, let's look at it from your perspective, same issue. It sounds like we're talking about maybe a control issue where one party might want to control the other, but I think there's a realization after divorce, even if you wanted the divorce, you no longer control what that other person does. However, you may not want to upset the person when you're in the same situation. So you still want to have that amicability if possible. So it's like, maybe you can do whatever you want, but maybe it's not the best idea to do whatever you want. What's your opinion here? Do you see this a lot?
I see it. And, you know, it's totally agreed. I think that we have to be able to separate the emotional issue and the control issue from the health issue. So, you know, if we can say, even if there was no pandemic, when it comes down to immediately dating and introducing children, you have to think of, you know, is this longevity? What is this going to do? Is this more for me, or is it for the betterment of my child that I introduce them to someone after a week of dating, right? Because 9 times out of 10, there's a greater probability that there's going to be more people and confusion on the part of your child. In the time of the pandemic, the big thing that comes up is, but they're going to expose to health concerns, which is it's a very realistic thing. So again, for the betterment of your children, you have to make the decision collaboratively.
And I want to bring up something today too, and we're not going to have time during this show, but both of our guests here are specialists in both adoptions, fostering children. And I really feel like we should continue this conversation on a different show about bringing in new children to the family, because I think that's such a beautiful topic, and you both are experts as well. So I just wanted to let the audience know that's something we won't touch on today, but we've got 2 experts there on those issues. Sophia has a question for you, Juliana. Our hearing's done online right now during COVID. I can answer that from my perspective. I do commercial litigation, and all my hearings and all my mediations, everything right now is happening online, except for City Hall. I have to go into City Hall. I don't know what's happening with family law. That's Juliana, that's you.
Yeah, everything is online except for domestic violence injunctions. When we're going to court for those, and they're practicing social distancing, everybody's wearing masks. We haven't had to go to too many of those hearings, but sometimes if there is violence in the home, that is one way that we can, assist. But everything else, yeah, we're not even finding any delays with our court hearings. I feel like we're actually getting court hearings quicker dates.
And I can't believe almost 30 minutes have gone by so fast. There's so much information I want to cover. They do title the show Boca's Briefcase because we bring on experts who have such valuable information in the briefcase. So we like to sort of wrap up the show and offer anything that you haven't been able to share. Pull out of your own briefcase. If what do you really want to share with the audience that's relevant today? If you could give one piece of information from your practice, what do you want to tell the South Florida community? What advice do you want to give? Alexia, I guess we could start with you. Juliana just spoke.
Well, a great piece of advice is, maintaining your mental health regardless. Don't wait until a problem occurs before you seek advice on how to strategize for success. If we want to be successful in our relationships, in our divorce, and the thereafter is what I call it, or with our kids and parenting, sometimes we need a third party to come in, and experts like myself and Juliana, in order to advise down the right road.
And can clients meet with you right now via FaceTime or Zoom, or is it all in person? I'm
doing everything virtually with the exception of my adoptions. So, and that is for the safety of my clients and for my family. But, it makes it a lot easier. And I've actually been one that has done virtual since way before COVID. I've been incorporated that into the practice, and people love it. No drive.
I believe that might happen with court too. Some of these hearings that are 5 minutes and we're doing this virtually, I think it will carry forward. It's saving clients money and it saves time. Mm-hmm. And Juliana, I know you have many briefcases full of legal advice. What would you like to share? And again, to the audience, this is not legal advice for you personally, but this is general conversation. I have to say that.
Well, yeah, of course. I love what Alexia said. I mean, making a plan for success. So we always say, you know, part of this is when you're just starting to think about, well, maybe divorce is in my future, like, you know, seeking out legal advice and making a plan, knowing what it's going to look like. That's only going to help you in the long run, help your family in the long run. So that's something that we really harp on. And then, you know, when we were kind of talking about dating, I know I don't have a lot to say about dating. I deal with divorce, but we do handle prenups, and I love prenuptial agreements. I think it's such a respectful way of making full disclosure to somebody that you're about to enter into a legal relationship with. And so that's something, you know, just that's another way of making a plan for the future.
Thank you so much. And thank you both for being here. I have a couple of comments saying thank you so much. I'm getting texts saying thank you for being here. I want to just add something too. We're going to be talking about it in a couple weeks. If anyone is doing, this is completely unrelated. If anyone's doing a mail-in ballot or voting, and again, we'll be talking about this separately, make sure if you're doing this now that the signature matches your driver's license. When they do receive your mail-in ballot, it's pulled at the division of what's it called, the Office of Supervisor of Elections. They actually pull your signature from their record, and if it doesn't match, your ballot might get tossed. So if you're going to vote, just pull out your driver's license. It's a little tip I meant to throw in at the beginning. And someone before we go, they're asking for your contact information. Can you both state how people can reach you? Alexia, can you go first?
Hi, the easiest thing to do is to call, and you can do that at 561-206-4073. You can always, they'll put my website on there, but it's simple. It's my name, AlexiaMcLeod.com.
Okay, and Juliana, I guess people can find you on the Florida bar by looking up your name, but if not,
yes, our website is BocaFamilyLawyers.com. So we are based in Boca Raton, and you know, you can. There's a lot of ways to get in touch with me there. Call, text, however you feel comfortable.
Okay, great. And if anyone forgets, I'm at Zalman Law. You guys know where to find me, and I will share their information anytime because I know a lot of people watch this after today. So if you miss that, just give me a call or email me, and we'll share your information. Thank you both so much, and thank you to the Boca Raton Tribune. And I hope everyone has a good day. And thank you so much.
Thank you, Hilary.
See you next week.
Take care.
We're still here.